Hi everybody. Today I'm back with another Grail Quest review. Grail Quest is a set of fantasy gamebook adventures written by J.H. Brennan, published by Armada in the 1980s. Originally I made a single video that referenced the entire series, using book one as an example for all the things I like about the author and his works. Great storyteller was Brennan. I had a lot of fun replaying and reviewing the Castle of Darkness, making the video and everything, and I hadn't read it over 25 years. So I decided, why not take a closer look at another one, compare and contrast the two, and discuss the story elements and rate the fantasy world building against the first book in the series, and just take in another adventure. As I was preparing to make this video, I learned Mr. Brennan passed away this year on January the 1st, 2024, at the age of 83. He died of Parkinson's disease. Over his lifetime, he wrote 100 books that were published. And so far, I haven't read one that I didn't enjoy. So as a tribute to the author, I will first say R.I.P. Mr. Brennan. And moving forward, I will try to read and review more of his stories. For this video, I decided to replay Grail Quest Book 2, The Den of Dragons. Like I said before, I read the series for the first time as a teenager, and in this particular case, I don't really remember anything about the specific story. So I was really excited to play through it all again after all these years. This video will not contain massive spoilers. It will merely have a few teasers, much like a movie trailer, so I can talk about and describe some of the more interesting elements of the book. So the quest in this title has a familiar introduction. The wizard Merlin casts a net spell through time in the form of a book to capture the reader's mind, thereby drawing them into the realm of Avalon, medieval Camelot, with all of its trappings of knights, princesses, magic, and dragons. Merlin explains how certain climate conditions may portend ideal breeding seasons for dragons, and in this story, dragons are more like pests to the realm. They are seasonally present. Knights have to fend them off from stealing cattle or damaging properties, and they are more nuisance-like, but generally depicted as not necessarily pure evil. However, oppressive omens also accompany the latest dragon season, which unfortunately hints that there is something worse to come. So what happens is an archbishop shows up in Camelot with the report of a brass dragon that attacks and destroys a monastery in Canterbury. And the story goes there is only 5 reported cases of these creatures in recorded history, the last being in ancient Roman times, while the story takes place in the subsequent medieval era. So not much is really known about the main antagonist. Brass dragons are reported to be twice the size of regular dragons and have some magical capabilities, like they're supposed to be able to talk to humans. They get their name based on their scale color, and religious characters believe they emerge from hell somehow. So some people think they might be demonic, obviously. King Arthur summons Merlin for help. Merlin captures the reader's mind, transmutes their conscious into the Pip character, who will then act as Merlin's cat's paw once again, to bring order back to the realm by defeating the scourge of the brass dragon. So this is the setup, and it's very well written, way better than I can describe it to you. It's short, it's punchy, and the most remarkable thing about it to me is how economical Brennan is with his writing. You get all this in just a few pages, literally. And it even includes a lot of dragonology, if that's a word, that may even be mostly original. Like, it describes how dragons come to breathe fire and all their various morphologies, and it's really impressive. Anyway, once Merlin brings a quest into focus, Pip gets outfitted for the adventure, and this is where we see the first differences from book 1. The core game rules do remain the same, so watch my first video if you need an explanation of how they work. However, in this adventure, there's a bit more going on with the character setup. Even though you start the game with your enchanted blade, once again, introduced in book 1 as Excalibur Jr., which is a +5 sword, you get to spend money on other commonplace gear, weapons, tools, and armor. So even though you have a great weapon to start with and a dragon skin jacket that provides good defensive protection, you still go through the motions of outfitting your character with mundane items and other stuff, which I didn't really appreciate why initially, but whatever. In my game, I bought leather armor to wear under the dragon skin, 5 days rations, cooking utensils, and a harp. The harp was expensive. In addition, Merlin supplies you with a substantial spell book, so the use of magic is much more extensive in this adventure. These, for the most part, are above level 1 D&D magic. The spells are limited use, they cost life points to cast, and you have to roll a 7 on a 2d6 for them to be successful. And there is a marquee one-shot super spell in the book that costs 15 life points just to cast. And all I'll say is that it is a single-use high form of illusionary magic. After tracking the dragon through the use of his crystal ball, Merlin teleports you to the starting point of the adventure. Before he sends you on your way, he gives you a crudely drawn map. It proves to be worthless. It's kind of a joke in the story. And so the adventure here feels different than the first one. Like, you don't know what to expect going into this one. Are we talking prosaic encounters, magical stuff, interdimensional settings? You just don't know. In book one, you had Anselm the Wizard. You had intel on him, at least. You knew some things about his castle and where to find him. In this story, you don't know anything really about your adversary or where you need to go at the start. There are a few charming details about Pip's home life in this story, but overall there are far fewer human beats in book two, I guess, because by this time Pip is more of a veteran, so you don't get as much early family relations and the rise up from obscurity with all the associated growing pains, trials, and tribulations for Pip. There's less of an arc. Anyway, moving on. At some point during the adventure, you arrive at a cursed village, and this isn't really a massive spoiler since the map is printed at the very front of the book. This portion of the story does not encompass the entire adventure. However, the experiences in this setting do set the tone for the rest of the story, I would argue. And the tone is weird because the whole town is cursed. On is off, up is down. Not literally, but certainly nothing may actually be as it appears. You do arrive there through magic, so all bets are off, really. The map has page numbers on it, so you can explore all the landmarks of the town in any order by turning to the listed sections in the book and then resolving the encounters. This is an innovation of Book 2. In the first adventure, players had to map the floor plan of the castle themselves, so this is different. I think a lot of people enjoyed this map feature. I did. I don't want to reveal much about the Stone Martin village other than to say parts of it reminded me of Medusa's lair from the original Clash of the Titans movie. And it's weird. Like I said before, we're talking Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland-like. More fringe fantasy than book one, I would say. The second part of the story becomes more of a traditional dungeon crawl. Yet there is still bizarro elements at play. Think Cabin in the Woods, the movie, and that's all I'll say about that. You just have to read it for yourself. So the real question is, how effective is all of this from a storyteller reviewer's perspective? I think overall Den of Dragons is extremely interesting. The monsters, the encounters are really strange and creative. You can't say the story is ever predictable at any point. The canvas here is much more broad than the first story. And I do think there's more entertainment value in book 2. Yet I don't necessarily believe that means it's better than the first story. They're both hits. The thing is, the broader scope means perhaps less development of the mood and atmosphere and maybe less overall immersion in the story for the reader. The first adventure is gothic fiction, so you feel the claustrophobic weight of the creepy castle, the unintelligible scrolls, trapdoors, dark passages, all the gross characters and monsters all closing in on you the closer you get to the final encounter. In this one, there is elements for this for sure, but I think the most effective storytelling in book 2 happens for the most part at the very end. Some other points I made note of that affected my overall impression of Den of Dragons include the use of minor supporting characters. Brennan recycles a couple of minor characters in this story. They're all right, nothing too special. There are a lot of dead-end loops. I realize this is necessary in this style of writing, but still, I mean, sometimes it could feel a little annoying. There are more than a few red herring clues. And more importantly, there are still many insta-kill traps and pitfalls to the extent that it's virtually impossible to play through the entire adventure without dying multiple times. That's a fact. Magical items and the use of magic in general is better in book 2. Pip's world seems bigger. And like I said before, the adventure is always interesting, no doubt about that. And finally, the evil end boss, the whole final encounter is very well written and fun to play out, as it is in the first book as well. So you get strong finales both times. So if you're forcing me to say which I like better, book 1 or book 2, it's going to come down to a matter of subtlety. Questions of what do I prefer, wizards or dragons? How do you take your fantasy? Well done fringe or medium rare traditional? So you know me, I'm old school, so give me the gothic extravaganza, but that's just me. And I know for sure everybody who enjoyed book 1 came back for book 2 and probably liked it even more. The question is, what happens next? We've seen both ends of the spectrum already. Is it something in between? The truth is, I don't remember. I know it's just called the Gateway of Doom. So stay tuned. Someday we might find out. Thanks for watching. More content coming soon.